Abhishek Buxi. I am working as assistant professor in the Department of Zoology, Mahatma Gandhi Government Arts College, Mahe, Union Territory of Puducherry, India. This is my fifth video in this series known as Lectures of Zoology. In this series of lectures, I am discussing the different topics of zoology. I have started this series with discussion on different physiological processes of rabbit, Oryctolagus cuniculus. This is the third part of circulatory system of rabbit. In my previous two video lectures, that is in circulatory system of rabbit part 1 and in circulatory system of rabbit part 2, I have discussed in detail about the composition of rabbit's blood, its component, its function, and also about the anatomical and structural organization of rabbit's heart. In the second part of circulatory system of rabbit, I have discussed the detailed organization of arterial and venous system. In this third and concluding part of circulatory system of rabbit, we will discuss the functioning of circulatory system of rabbit, which is more or less functioning of heart of rabbit. So let's begin our today's discussion. In case of rabbit, the heart is the pump which function as the central organ for the circulatory system. This heart works continuously throughout the life of rabbit, or for that matter in every animal. In case of mammals, the heartbeat of every individual begins much before the birth of that individual. For example, in case of human, from the 5th week of pregnancy, the heartbeats start inside the uterus of the mother when the embryonic development of the child begins, and this heartbeats continues till the last moment of that individual's life. Similarly, in every mammalian species, the heartbeat of the animal begins much before the birth of that animal. This is the same condition with rabbit as well. So heart is a very strong and rigorous working organ of any animal. In case of mammalian heart, the heart follows a rhythmic pattern of functioning. That rhythmic steps of heart working is known as cardiac cycle. In case of rabbit, the heart performs the function of a pump which forces continuously, and it is this pump, this muscular pump, which pushes the blood in the blood vessels, and it acts as a pump for the blood which is collected in its ventricle, and it pumps blood into the arteries to distribute the blood in the different parts of the body. But the heart also acts as a receiver, a reservoir, a suction pump which draws blood into its auricles through the veins and collect the blood from each and every part of the body. So heart basically function in two different aspects. The anterior part of the heart, the auricular part of the heart, works as the suction pump, whereas the posterior and the lower part of the heart works as the pump for pushing blood out from the ventricles into the different parts of the body through arteries. For knowing more in detail about the structure and organization of rabbit's heart, please refer to my first Circulatory System of Rabbit Part 1 lecture. It will help you to understand its structure and organization. During heartbeats, once the auricle contract and the ventricles relax, or what we can say the ventricles dilate, and the second step is when the auricles relax and the ventricles contract. This process takes place continuously back to back, and this cyclic process is referred as cardiac cycle. Contraction and relaxation goes on simultaneously. When the auricles contract, the ventricles relax. On the contrary, when the auricles relax, parallelly the ventricles contract. So this process of contraction and relaxation takes place parallelly in the different parts of the heart. Contraction mechanism of any mammalian heart is referred as systole, and the dilation or relaxation is considered as a diastole. So a cardiac cycle is basically made up of systole and a diastole, which is taking place cyclic manner. Systole followed by the diastole, and which is again followed by second systole, and so on. The heart muscles which makes rabbit's heart is of a specific category. In case of rabbit, its body comprises three different types of muscles: skeletal muscles, smooth muscles, and third category, cardiac muscles. Cardiac muscles are only found in the heart layer, the myocardial layer of the rabbit's body. This muscle, the myocardial layer muscle, what is referred as the cardiac muscles, are different in the structure as well as in function from skeletal as well as smooth muscles. These muscles have the most unique function that they never get fatigued. You just consider that this is one organ which is start working. It is a muscular organ, but it start working much before the birth of an individual, and it keeps off working day and night continuously without getting tired throughout the life, and if it stops ever, the life of that individual gets over. So it keeps on beating and working. So these muscles are designed and evolved in such a way that they never get fatigued or tired. The right auricle of the heart receives deoxygenated or venous blood from the different parts of the body through the three different major veins, the two precavals and one postcaval. For knowing the detail of the organization of the venous structure, please refer to Circulatory System of Rabbit Part 2, in which I have discussed in detail about the different arterial and venous system of rabbit body. Similarly, the left auricle receives oxygenated or arterial blood from the lungs through pulmonary veins, which brings blood after respiratory gaseous exchange from lungs. The venous and oxygenated blood, they are forced into the respective chambers of the ventricle by the contraction of the auricles. So when the left auricle and the right auricle, both of them, they start contracting together, they pushes and forces the blood which they have received from the respective veins into corresponding ventricles of their side. The left and the right part of rabbit's heart is completely physically divided into two separate chambers or two different sections by the intra-auricular and interventricular septum. So it never the left part of the heart never communicates with the right part of the heart in the adult rabbit individuals. So let's discuss that what causes these heart contract and relax, what we refer as the heartbeat. One cycle, one cardiac cycle is referred as one heartbeat. What creates this heartbeat? In case of animal kingdom, different categories of animals have two major category of hearts. One which is referred as neurogenic heart and the second which is referred as myogenic heart. Neurogenic hearts are those hearts which are contracting and relaxing or which are working under the instruction of nervous system. That means it is the neuronal system, the neurotransmitters which conduct the heartbeat. For example, crab's heart. However, the second category of heart in animal kingdom is known as myocardial heart. The myocardial heart are those heart in which the heart contracts and relax itself. That means the contraction and relaxation conduction is generated within the heart itself. So the wave of contraction in the heart originates from a particular part of right auricle referred as sino-auricular node, or in short it is referred as SA node. SA node is also popularly known as pacemaker because this is the structure, this is the part of the heart which generates pace, which generates cyclic contraction and relaxation cycle in the heart of rabbit. This is a group of, the pacemaker is made up of a group of specialized cardiac muscles with nerve fibers like structures. In fact, the whole heart of rabbit is made up of three different kind of cardiac muscles. The majority of the cardiac muscles belong to the myocardial structure, which forms the contracting and relaxing part, the myocardial thick middle muscular layer. A small fraction comprises SA node, or what we call as the pacemaker, the self-rhythmic structures, the one which generates pulsation and which creates heartbeat in rabbit. And similar structures exist in all mammalian heart where the heartbeat originates from SA node. The third category is also very limited in quantity, which forms a nerve-like network within the myocardial layer to generate and distribute the pace which is generated by the SA node to the other parts of the heart. SA node or pacemaker, as I referred, is present on the posterior wall of the right auricle in between the opening of the right and precaval and the inferior vena cava or postcaval. SA node in rabbit represents the remnant of sinus of lower vertebrates. The wave of contraction spreads around the SA node like concentric circles into both the auricles, something like ripples of the water when you throw a stone in a stagnant water body. So the pacemaker generates a wave of contraction which starts or emerges from the SA node and it distributes in concentric circle to its parallel region in the auricular part of the heart. And both the auricles, the right auricle which actually comprises SA node, as well as the left auricle which is parallel to the right auricle, both these structures contract together, and the blood which they have received, the right auricle has received all the deoxygenated blood through the three different vena cavae, whereas the left auricle has received all the oxygenated blood through the single pulmonary vein. All these blood from the right auricle, the deoxygenated blood, is pumped or forced by the auricular wall because of its contraction to the right ventricle. Similarly, the oxygenated blood of the left auricle is pushed from the left auricle through the left auriculoventricular valve, the bicuspid valve, into the left ventricle. So this is the diagrammatic representation of rabbit's heart and its conduction of the heartbeat. So this is what we call as the SA node or sino-auricular node, and this is the diagrammatic representation how the wave initiates and spreads to the both auricles parallelly. The second most important structure in the conduction of rabbit's heartbeat is a second nodal structure, what is referred as auricular ventricular node or AV node, which is the third category of the cardiac cells which I had referred, which looks like nerve structures, but they are basically the cardiac cells which can conduct the pulsation which is generated in the SA node or pacemaker to the remaining part of the heart. So as soon as the both auricles contract, the tricuspid valve of the right side and the bicuspid valve of the left side, they opens and the blood is forced into the ventricle, and thus the blood from the right auricle into the right ventricle and oxygenated blood from the left auricle into the left ventricle enters. The auricle then relaxes and another wave of contraction begins from the proximal end of the ventricle. So that is the contraction of the auricle, or what we can say the systole of auricular region. Throughout this phase, when the auricles were contracting, ventricles were completely relaxed. They were in their diastolic stage. The wave which the SA node has generated reaches to the AV node, which is present at the base of interauricular septum, and from there that wave travels in the interventricular septum into the bundle of His. This part is known as bundle of His, and then it travels to the two branches of auriculoventricular cardiac cells, the specialized conducting cells, and then it reaches to the apex of the rabbit's heart, where it redistributes and branches off in Purkinje fiber. Remember, the wall of these intraventricular septum are insulated. Hence, when the pulsation is traveling through these wall, the pulsation does not create any conduction to the wall of the ventricular part of the rabbit's heart. But as soon as it reaches to the apex, the branching on the external layer, they were not insulated and they start releasing the conducting pulse, and which creates a force of contraction from the posterior tip, from the tip portions of the ventricles upwards. As a result, the lower part of the heart, it start contracting, and at the same moment both these valves, the tricuspid valve of right side and the bicuspid valve of the left side of the heart closes. As a result, now the ventricles are contracting and the valve which are guarding their connection with the auricles are closed, and the ventricles are contracting. As a result, the pressure inside both the ventricles enhances a lot. So the fibers which we referred as the Purkinje fibers, they distributes into the ventricular external layer, The wave of contraction from the SA node stimulates the AV node, that is the auriculoventricular node, which do not immediately sends impulse of contraction to the Purkinje fiber because it takes some momentary time to reach till the apex of the heart, and thus ventricles contract a little time later than the auricles. By the time the contraction of ventricles begin, the ventricles start its systolic stage, auricles already start its diastolic stage. When the ventricles begins to contract, the right and left auriculoventricular apertures are closed by the tricuspid and bicuspid valves. Therefore, blood cannot go back into the auricles, which I was referring you, that as soon as the ventricles start contracting, both corresponding auriculoventricular valves, the tricuspid and bicuspid valves, they close, and as a result, pressure inside the ventricles elevates a lot. Under this high pressure, the two aorta, the aortic arches, which are connected to the respective side of ventricles. The right ventricle is having a pulmonary aorta, whereas the left ventricle is having corticosystemic aorta. Although these two aortae, they have semilunar valves which remain closed when the blood was pushed from the auricle to the ventricles. In fact, these semilunar valves of aortae, they still remain closed when the contraction of ventricles begin. But as soon as the contraction of ventricles begin, the bicuspid and tricuspid valves, that is the auriculoventricular valves of respective sides, they close. So now the ventricles, both the ventricles, they became a closed chamber, and now they are contracting. So the pressure inside them elevates a lot, and because of this high pressure, the semilunar valves of both aortae, they open, and the blood from the ventricles enters into the respective sides of aortae. The semilunar valves of the aortic arches are still closed, and the blood is blocked in all directions, finally resulting into an increase in the blood pressure inside the ventricles. When this pressure is more than those of the arteries, the semilunar valves of the aortic arches open, and the blood is forced, pumped into these aortic arches. Thus, the oxygenated blood from the left ventricle enters into the systemic aorta for the distribution in each and every part of the body, whereas the deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle pumps into pulmonary aorta, which carries it into the lungs of the rabbit for oxygenation and removal of carbon dioxide through the alveoli of the lungs. Once the ventricle pumps blood into respective aortae, then the ventricles start relaxing, and by the time the ventricles has pumped the blood in the respective aortae, auricles are again filled with the blood, and the next cycle of contraction, the next pulse is generated from the pacemaker, and the process is again repeated. So this entire cycle, the auricular systole, that is contraction, followed by the ventricular systole, and which causes the blood to get pumped. Now here you need to understand that when the auricles are contracting, ventricles are relaxed, and when the ventricles start contracting, auricles already have attained their relaxed state, and they already start filling blood for the next cycle of heartbeat. So this action goes on continuously as long as the animal is alive. A complete contraction, systole and diastole of the heart constitutes a heartbeat or heart cycle, or more commonly what is referred as a cardiac cycle of an animal. Now, the second important aspect about the functioning of circulatory system of rabbit is double circulation. In fact, double circulation is a characteristic feature of all mammals. Now it is clear from the above descriptions that there remains a complete separation of deoxygenated and oxygenated blood in a mammalian heart because of the presence of intra-auricular and intraventricular septum. For better clearance, you can refer to Circulatory System of Rabbit Part 1 of my video lecture. There, in that video lecture, I have detailed structure, and with the diagrammatic representation I have referred to the division and separation of all the parts and the chambers of the heart in detail. The right part of the heart is concerned with the venous or deoxygenated blood, whereas the left part of the heart is dedicated for the oxygenated blood collection and its pumping. In one complete circuit in the body, the blood passes twice through the heart, once through its right side and then through its left side. Let's see how the blood flows within the rabbit's body. So this is a diagrammatic representation diagram for the flow of the blood in the different parts of the rabbit's body. So the portions which are represented with the white colored tubular structures are representing the parts in which the oxygenated blood are circulating, whereas the part which are shown with the dark black color bands are representing the portions in which the deoxygenated bloods are flowing to the different parts of the rabbit's body. So this is the left part of the rabbit's heart. So from the left ventricle, the blood is pumped into the systemic aorta, which distribute it to the anterior part of the body, that is in the head and in the neck and some part of the upper part of the body, and the remaining is the dorsal aorta, which distributes the oxygenated blood to all the important visceral organs of the body like the liver, stomach, GI tract, reproductive system, and all of them. And in that process, the blood enters into the capillary network bed where the respiratory gases and the other important materials exchange takes place, and the blood converts from oxygenated to deoxygenated. Now all these deoxygenated blood are collected by the venous capillaries into the venules, and then those venules joins to form the veins, and all these veins combine together to form the vena cava. Both the vena cava, they bring deoxygenated blood to the right auricle of the heart. So here comes the first cycle of the blood, which begins from the left ventricle, enters into the systemic aorta, passes to different parts of the body, crosses through the capillary network, converts into deoxygenated, and travels back to the right auricle of the heart through passing through the different veins and finally through the three different vena cava of the rabbit's body. Now this blood, which enters into the right auricle of the rabbit's heart, from the right auricle it passes to the right ventricle, and from the right ventricle the same blood is pumped into the pulmonary aorta, where it travels to the lungs alveolar region, where it again get reoxygenated, and this oxygenated blood travels through the pulmonary veins and enters into the left auricle. So this cycle of the blood, which begins from the right ventricle and ends into the left auricle of the rabbit's heart, there's another cycle. So the blood which has started its journey from the left ventricle again comes back to the left ventricle, passing through the left auricle. Now the same blood has entered heart twice before it finally reaches to its initial point from where it has started its journey. So the same blood actually travels twice through the rabbit's heart in one complete circulation. Hence this is referred as double circulation. So this type of circulation of blood is known as double circulation. The complete separation of ventricles into two chambers enables the deoxygenated and oxygenated blood not to mix. The pathway which I have referred is known as the course of the blood circulation. This is actually the pathway, the sequential path through which the blood travels during its double circulation in the rabbit's body. It starts its journey from the lungs in the oxygenated blood form through the pulmonary veins. It arrives to the left auricle. From the left auricle, it enters into the left ventricle, crossing through the bicuspid left auriculoventricular valve. From the left ventricle, it is pumped into carotidosystemic aorta, from where it enters into different large arteries, which further pushes the blood into the smaller arterioles, and from there the blood enters into the arterial capillaries, where the respiratory gaseous exchange takes place from the tissue fluids. Now the various organs of the bodies, they get supplied with these capillaries, and from these organs the venous capillaries arises, which brings deoxygenated blood with them. These venous capillaries fuse to form venules. Now these are having deoxygenated or venous blood. These venules fuse together to form veins, which further fuse to form larger veins, and all these veins of the body fuse together to form two precavals and one postcaval, which finally opens into the right auricle of the rabbit's heart, and from there this deoxygenated blood goes to the right ventricle, from where it is pumped through the pulmonary aorta to the lungs for reoxygenation process. So the pulmonary aorta carries the deoxygenated blood into the pulmonary arteries, and that enters through the pulmonary capillaries, where the reoxygenation happens, and now the blood again becomes oxygenated, and the whole cycle is again repeated. So the same blood travels twice through the heart before it completes its journey from its starting point. Thus, the blood passes through the heart twice, once through the pulmonary circuit and second time through the systemic circulation. So this cycle, the cycle which begins from the left ventricle, goes to the different parts of the body, and the blood returns to the heart through the three vena cavae into the right auricle. This cycle of the blood circulation is known as systemic circulation, whereas the second cycle, which begins from the right ventricle through the pulmonary aorta and returning to the heart through the pulmonary veins into the left auricle, this cycle of the blood circulation is known as pulmonary circulation. So these two circulations, systemic circulation and pulmonary circulation, together they are referred as double circulation of rabbit's body. So this type of blood circulation is referred as the double circulation. So this is all about the working mechanism of rabbit's circulatory system. However, just for your understanding, I have kept one diagram which is basically representing the different stages of cardiac cycle of human. Please, I'm repeating, this is not the timing, and the distribution is not of that of rabbit, it is of human. This is just for the understanding. In case of human, one entire heartbeat or cardiac cycle is of 0.8 second, and the inner circle is representing the cyclic changes in the auricular part of the human heart, whereas the external circle is representing the timing and functioning of the ventricular part of the human heart. What you can see that the human auricles, they contract only for 0.1 second and then they start relaxing. So this is the arterial systole, which is followed by the 0.7 seconds of arterial diastole. As soon as the auricular systole gets over, the blood is pumped from the auricles into the ventricle. The ventricle systole begins, that the ventricles start contracting and it start pumping blood into the respective aortae. and subsequently there is a common phase of 0.4 second starting from 0.4 to 0.8 of this diagram when both the parts of the heart is in the relaxed condition. So that's what is being referred as a small pause in between the two contraction of the auricles and ventricles. It is basically not the pause, this is the diastolic, the joint diastolic condition of both auricle and ventricle when they are relaxing. So this is the complete detail of functioning of circulatory system of rabbit, and this is the conclusion and the final part of the circulatory system of rabbit. All this material which I have presented here on this lecture, I have taken with the help, I have collected all these information with the help of two textbooks which I have used: modern textbook of zoology, Vertebrates by R.L. KOTPAL, and CHORDATE Zoology by P.S. VERMA. All the images which I have used, I have downloaded from Google Images. Please keep watching my channel. You can subscribe me so that you can get information about the new videos which I'll upload as soon as on the YouTube. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good luck.